live?
I don't know. Not yet.
Yeah, it says.
I see it.
We're
It
live.
says live.
We're live.
I'm guessing
All right.
we're live.
We are live.
We did it.
We did it. All right.
Well, that's the show. See you guys later.
All right. Find it on the Facebook pages. Share it on your friends' feeds real quick, guys. Let me know when you guys have done that.
All right. Well, that's the show. See you guys later.
Nice. And then we have a private chat on the right and a comments chat on the right. So you guys can see that there. We should probably do this one.
You can also share it to your story.
Oh, share it to your story. Yes. Share it to your story.
Where is it? Settings? What?
Settings? What settings?
I'm looking at where do I set it to share?
Share to profile.
I know I did this last time. Now I feel like an idiot.
All right. We are live. Akash, are we live?
We are live, my friend.
We are live. Thank you guys for joining us. As people have comments, questions, concerns as we do this live, feel free to just type them in. We're bringing some people together, awesome real estate agents from Arizona to Vegas tonight, which is awesome to have everyone participating. We're going to be sharing and talking about iBuyers this episode. And we just kind of wanted to come together, do a roundtable and discuss just our dealings with iBuyers and everything, and where we think it's headed, where we think it's going, and kind of go from there.
Cool. I think a great thing to just describe as we pull up this next slide is just like, what are iBuyers, who are our buyers, right? So
yeah,
for those who are unaware, it's companies like Opendoor, Offerpad, Zillow offers when Zillow is in the buying game, buying and selling properties. I think there's some other names that might have been popular as well. I think Knock was one. I don't think they really operate here in Phoenix, but anything that has that model of we'll buy a seller's house cash directly for them first and then put it back up for sale for mostly a marked up price.
Yeah. Christian, in Vegas, which ones were most prominent in the last year?
The past year, even 2 years more. Zillow and Opendoor. They're two main ones. You guys heard me?
Kind of.
You can hear you better when you're
When you're leaned in, I can hear you, Christian.
Yeah.
Okay. I was saying that in the past 2 years, the past 2 years, most common or the two iBuyers that have dominated the sector of the market have been Zillow. With I'm sure it's like that in AZ as well, and Opendoor. So.
Okay. And Opendoor. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We had others. We had others come in and out. That came in quarterly or periodically, and then bought a big chunk of unloaded a big chunk of money to the market, and then went radio silent again. But for the most part, the most consistent ones that were always the ones that I had to compete against when I went on listing appointments were Zillow and iBuyer. Zillow and Opendoor. Sorry.
Got it.
Right.
We see all the headlines now, right? Zillow is officially out of the game. Zillow is kind of partnering with Opendoor. How do we feel about that?
Well, Zillow decided to let Opendoor take on all their losses so they can keep losing more money because Zillow didn't want to eat anymore after their whole fiasco for iBuying.
Right.
I think they both hit a fiasco at the same time. I think Zillow announced that they were I can't remember how much underwater, and Opendoor announced they were being sued for false advertising, and then they announced that they were joining forces. You're at rock bottom, I'm at rock bottom, let's join rock bottom.
We can fail faster together.
Did you say misery loves company?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because going through this, as we started into the pandemic, right? Things were there was a value proposition to the iBuyer model, which was they were very quick on getting things closed, right? Pick your closing. And that was the one thing that was very hard to kind of counter for me with potential clients is like, I can't guarantee your closing. You know what I mean? Like, I need this closed and we need to be done in 30 days and I get to pick my date, right? But then going into the pandemic, you know, as things got chaotic, we got, you know, you were sold in like 3 days, right? So you could pick your date, and that value proposition totally went away. And that was the one thing that was hard for me to counter going into it, but then it was like kind of irrelevant. But I mean, I got to hand it to that whole atmosphere. Like, they were very good at marketing. Just, you know, just the process. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but to me, like, the process was literally the real estate process. They just made it sound like it's something different when it really isn't.
Yeah, that's all they did. They replaced commissions with service fees that were actually higher than what standard commissions were.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a marketing tactic to get people under contract.
Sold and all of those things as well. So very, very similar. Just like, yeah, let's 72 sold. It's 72 days on market, which if you look at 72 sold's actual days on market was never near 72 hours. I mean, not 72 days. It's probably more
now.
72 days.
Yeah, it's 72 days now.
72 days sold. But yeah, so if you look back at those, they were preaching and preaching and preaching this 72 hours sold or this program and that program, and their days on market were the same. Their as far as what they actually closed for, it's probably a few percentage points less than what the average realtor would actually close for as well, because they're compromising in certain areas. So.
Well, to be honest, they're actually really good platforms for certain clients. I've actually sold 2 houses to Opendoor through clients through listings this year because they just didn't want anyone in the home. They didn't want anyone coming through. They didn't want to have to deal with any of the hassle. Even when the market was super hot and we could easily get it sold, you know, within like a few days, they still just didn't want anyone coming through the house whatsoever. So using those iBuyers was a great option, especially for getting the numbers we wanted at the time. So I know that was like a really good benefit for those. I mean, besides just using a standard investor, because, you know, standard investor still wants to come in, do a full inspection, do everything. But with those iBuyers like Opendoor, Zillow, Offerpad, they were fine. Like, you just send them photos. You send them some pictures. You're the only one through the house. You send them a video. They literally would just go through the backyard, look at the outside of the house, and then they'd send you a number for like a repair request. Just to reduce the number pretty much, but it was super easy to do at the time, especially going through there. And they're pretty easy to work with, but they definitely put themselves in a hole by buying a bunch of really crap houses.
Yeah. And I mean,
if for your client, if convenience is your MO, then that's the way to go for sure, because then that's best servicing your client.
Exactly. You know, and it's not just that. They're great for if you needed to sell a house that you knew would be difficult to sell if you had people coming through because of like severe damage to like the carpet or like a really bad smell or it backs up to busy streets, stuff like that. And they would just go out and buy them. So them buying those really, really, really put them in a bad situation because now they're stuck with all those houses that are really hard to sell.
Yeah. And I think last year that was their only value proposition, really, because we all know that things were selling left and right last year at ridiculous rates, and, you know, ridiculous things were selling where we all could have sold those houses as well, but it was the seller didn't want to deal with the hassle of honestly probably people coming in and out, because they would have been in and out, and like you said, they didn't want to deal with having to get it ready for people to go in now. And actually, so their value proposition last year is backfiring because now they don't do enough to fix the problems of those houses, and now they're stuck with them and in a much harder market to sell them. So that's why they're in the position that they're in today.
Right. Yeah. And Thomas Danaher just shared a link in the comments. I haven't clicked it yet, but it's pretty much the headline is Zillow caught holding bag. So basically, you know, I mean, this story is going to be pretty prominent. Thanks for sharing that, Thomas. You know, kind of going into this next phase, which it's not a seller's market. It's not easy to sell these things, right?
Very similar to my last flip. All of a sudden, the person who took it from me and then remodeled it tried to sell it, did $120,000 in drops, and then they wound up keeping it, and now they're just renting it out, probably at a very low rate, considering what they put into it. So,
sure,
right. So, Akash, did you want to share a couple of stats that we can kind of talk around as a group?
Sure. I think one thing to note right now. So let's talk about right now. You have you've touched over 20,000 listings in the Phoenix armless market on our MLS down here, and a big thing from that is how much of that is iBuyer, how much of that is Opendoor, and you're looking at about 10 to 11% of the active inventory sitting from Opendoor and Offerpad right now. So they're holding a significant amount of what the market has available for them right now.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, it has a lot of command on how the market moves, right? So you're doing price drops or aggressive price drops. Well, now everyone else has to compete around you to do the same thing. And they're not, a company that can just write off losses when you're a regular homeowner, right? You're not going to be interested in selling your home for significantly cheaper or taking a loss and something like that. So,
right.
That's where you see, we're sharing stats on this page right now where you have average sold dollar per square foot as well as the average sales price. You see this down $9 a square foot in 1 month and down 4.2% in 1 month. Whereas over the previous couple of months, June, July, those decreases were a lot slower until you've seen recently in the past month that Opendoor has been just slashing their prices more aggressively. So they're having a significant effect on the downward pressure on pricing.
Right.
Now, do you think they're doing that as their thought for the market potentially going down even further? So they're trying to slash their prices to limit their losses?
Not so much. Yeah, that's one part of it. But when they're the one pushing it down themselves,
I know. Then they're screwing themselves.
We're gonna cut our losses before we cut our losses.
Right.
I mean, I think
cut our losses and make our losses even harder.
They just had zero strategy last year when they were buying all these properties. There was just no business strategy behind it whatsoever. And I think even the CEO of Zillow iBuyer platform came out and said that last year, that they were counting on an algorithm to tell them to buy, and that is now biting them in the ass a little bit. And now I think it's more of a panic sell where they're like, let's just sell everything we have, call it a fresh slate. Maybe we'll try this again. Maybe we'll have a little bit more of a strategy next time, and do this a little smarter.
Right.
And that's a good point, just right there. So to use somebody who's a tried and true realtor who's been in the market in and out for in and outs of the swings of the market and all of these things, it's good to have the knowledge of all of these things, because clearly people like Opendoor, Zillow, and all of these algorithms, they didn't have it right, and they did not perform to the same point that any average realtor would have done for you with just average knowledge of the market. So their algorithm was wrong, very wrong. In fact, they're all tanking now, and anybody who went through, somebody who actually was paying attention to the market day in and day out, the tried and true realtor or a wealth advisor or wealth manager, did a lot better than the average market.
Right. Because there's a lot of moving parts to it, right? The sales process and the way they would kind of structure the deal, it's very similar to a normal real estate transaction. It's just they were good at marketing that process, right? At least from my experience, they were very good at marketing the process of, it's hassle free and everything else, right? And then we have that saying that everything works in an up market, right? So
they're selling convenience.
But I mean,
sometimes convenience costs money.
Right.
And they proved that it did cost money because they came in underneath everybody else.
Well, they didn't always. Some of their offers were market value, if not a little bit above, and which is why they're selling at such a loss right now. Where I mean, the reason they had such market share last year is they weren't lowballing people, and because people knew that they could get, market value plus last year, so they were giving fair offers.
My last two I sold to Opendoor, we got way over market value. Way
they
over.
were not doing, but they're not sustainable, is what I meant on as far as a platform and as far as their algorithm. And none of that was sustainable because they're overpaying here. They're getting undercut and not able to sell for near the prices that they paid, and now they're losing their butts.
Well, but it's the same situation Zillow got themselves into.
Manager or anything else, we're much better off because we're paying attention. We're in the trenches every day, day in and day out. Yeah.
Well, and it's the same situation Zillow got themselves into, which is why they had such a loss, because they kept pushing prices up and up and up, thinking it was just going to exponentially increase. And as soon as it stopped and started flatlining, they started taking heavy, heavy losses, which is the same thing Opendoor was doing. The exact same model. Just push price, and then,
I mean, I truly think that
not always run that.
Hey guys, to add to the point that we're discussing, I think that the root of the reason why Zillow and Opendoor really didn't have any good success in the market is because they forget the one most foundational and essentially like 101 real estate thing, which is real estate is a people's business. It's a business. You can't just take a picture of a property and then just with those pictures calculate what you're going to resell it for, the purchase price. And I can speak to this from personal experience because from the flip side, you make your money on the purchase.
Yep.
And that's one thing that they did not have down. The purchase prices and the procedures to be able to negotiate properly, the right purchase price. That's the stuff backfire and then the burn on the back end. Right? So I mean that goes to show that us as real estate professionals, we're the realtor career is not going anywhere. It's been here, it's here, and it's going to stay. So that's why when I
you're right, Jana. That's exactly it. They don't do anything with the properties they buy.
Like in 2020, 2021, about being a real estate agent no longer being lucrative, or it's a career that's starting to diminish and die down. Like I was like, absolutely not. Like people forget that selling a home and buying a home or any type of real estate asset is one of the most important decisions in somebody's life. So therefore, you need somebody trusted. Not just a robot that's going to send you an email with a number on it. So, I think
and the robot and we had a comment here. The problem is they put no effort into selling the property. Slap some paint on the walls, no description. You can tell an Opendoor home the second you walk in. They don't do any deep cleaning. I mean, like that's kind of like when you have a big company kind of managing these things, there's only so much you can catch on to, right? And it just creates a situation where it was very easy to get a number. It was very easy to get a number and get the process going in terms of a sale, right? But then what has to happen? There's going to be service fees for this. This price that we're offering you is contingent on an inspector coming to look at the house anyway. So, and then, on and on and on. So it kind of changed what part of the sales process happens and when. But it created a situation where they were able to really dominate the market. And, one thing that I noticed is, Zillow is the Google of real estate. Like when anyone wants to look up something, they still say like, let me look it up on Zillow. Right. So, I mean, there is some value to that. They created this kind of, the brand for real estate. Outside of that, there wasn't this consistent brand of where do you look up houses.
We're great at marketing and backed up by a lot of people. That's what it is. Compared to, us as professionals, we're backed up, humans are backed up by a lot of knowledge and theory.
Right.
Wow. But sometimes we're not backed up by $1 billion. So that's just supposed to balance.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the stats here, Akash, and then we can chime in on some of that, like kind of seeing what's happening now.
Sure. This is recent. This is what we chatted about as a team on Monday, actually, right? So, Opendoor just pushing numbers in the last month. So more than doubling what they sold in August. So just getting rid of that large amount of inventory that they were holding. That last bullet point on there, I said they're holding about they have about 2,100 homes in inventory, right? And if you look at what's on market and under contract, it's close to 8 or 9% of the entire share of what's active and what's pending, like what's under contract. So just a huge increase with a significant cost there with that aspect. With what I mean by that is because they're selling a lot of homes, but they're also selling it for a loss. And if you see that stat down there at the bottom, what does that say? 88% of those homes were sold for less than what Opendoor paid for them, right?
Yeah.
And then you can see the significant effect on what they're doing in the amount of sales that they're doing right now, right? We chatted on the previous slide that you're still seeing 7,100 houses or so sold in the last month. And 1 in 16 of those sales in Maricopa County was by Opendoor. So once again, significant slice that they own and are operating and are transacting. And so anything that they do with their strategy in terms of pricing affects everybody who's in the market.
Right.
And I think it goes a lot beyond Opendoor because the hedge funds they're doing the same game plan. It's the same model. They were going and buying up all these homes and they wouldn't even look at it. And I think that is what was tested the last few years. Can you go and buy a home without even looking at it by running some numbers and go and generate a profit? And it worked for a little bit, but at the end of the day, it didn't because markets fluctuate. And a lot of it too, there's no emotion involved whatsoever. If there's no emotion when you're buying a house to go and put in work, why would someone fall in love with that house? Because unless there's some sort of financial model, they could only sell it to another investor. And at the end of the day, if you keep selling it to another investor, there's just no value left to it.
No, that's a really good point. Yeah. I didn't even really, think of it in that angle. Because if the house is shifting from investor to investor to investor, then there's a lot that kind of you lose in that transition. So that's a great point.
It's interesting.
Matt.
I heard an appraiser say, I think I shared this on our call on Monday. An appraiser said they are being told and looking at Opendoor properties and iBuyer sold properties as foreclosures or as distressed sales when they appraise a house. When they get comps and they're looking at comps on a house they're appraising, if anything was sold by an iBuyer, they pretty much just consider it a distressed sale at this point.
Interesting.
Yeah, actually, do you have some stats on that, Kosh, too, to kind of for the Offerpad and Opendoor situation?
Yeah, these are going to be back from August, but the trend has continued and remained the same. So just in terms of accuracy, just be accurate. But hang on a second here. What do we got here? Mainly want to look at the left side. This is an Opendoor versus Offerpad comparison. I'm not going to obviously dive that deep into it, but you can see right there that you have this overall gross margin for homes sold by Opendoor is in the negatives, and that they're achieving that 88% of list price. So what they're listing it for and what they're selling it for is a significant discount. And I think some of us on this chat as well have experienced dealing with Opendoor in the last 2 or 3 months. Is that right? Has anyone sold a house in the last 2 months versus previously?
Yeah.
Were you able to get concessions at whatever price you wanted and that kind of stuff pretty much?
Oh, yeah.
It's gotten a lot more flexible because they used to dictate a lot of the terms, and these businesses, they make money on so many different parts of the process where it's like, the title, the appraisal, the inspection, and all this stuff. And a lot of that we had no choice. When there was low inventory and everything, you kind of have to kind of roll with the punches and kind of pick your battles in terms of value, right, in the process. But now it's come to a point. I just dealt with Opendoor a month ago, where everything was on the table, right? And it wasn't expressed that way, but I mean, I could tell by I was pressing buttons and, during the negotiating back and forth with their representatives, and it was a different tone. It was, they tried to hold their ground on things, but very quickly they gave you quick responses and they just wanted to get deals in escrow. So, whether the title company is up for negotiations, concessions, how much concessions, all that. So obviously that shift has taken place, and that shift probably in the last 2 months. They're just trying to get rid of their inventory at this point. You know what I mean? So
we know that they're getting desperate when they're offering buyer agent incentives and bonuses as well.
Right.
Yeah.
If we're gonna go there.
Yeah.
And the model worked really well when they had most of the inventory and when our inventory was so low, and they could kind of control, they had the gold, so they could control almost everything, like kind of like Ramnik was saying. Now, when there's so much inventory, it doesn't really mean much. So they kind of lost all of their control, and power that they had. So we're kind of seeing that shift as we see they're taking losses and they're feeling the pain.
Yeah. There was an interesting stat. I'm not sure if we have it in our slides, Akash, but the inventory has been so low for so long in the Phoenix market, and now we're approaching 20 active listings, 20,000. And we had a situation, didn't we, where Opendoor listings were a significant part of that inventory, and because of that and the losses that they're taking, they're bringing down those average numbers and sales numbers, right, for the region. Am I accurate in saying that?
Yeah. We kind of walked through it a little quickly earlier, but it should be right. This one.
And anyone watching, if you have questions, concerns, anything about what we're talking about or your own experience, please share them with us, because it's helpful for everyone.
Yeah, we got about 20,000 homes active on market, and they're holding 21 homes in inventory, which is active and under contract. So like they're close to the 10% mark, and that's a significant amount, especially in that range that they're in, because they don't play in every price point, right? They had that buy box, which I think capped out somewhere at around 700,000. I think it went up during the pandemic or the last 2 years, but
yeah,
they weren't buying homes in the $1 million+ range, the specialty luxury stuff, the really unique things. They wouldn't buy homes of a certain age as well if it was older than 1978, lead-based paint or something like that.
Yeah.
They weren't buying historic homes, and so anything that was extremely niche or like that, they were leaving those things alone. So the fact is that they're playing with only 90% or 80% of what's actually in the market, and then to have 10% of that, like it's a significant impact on what the average home is going for, and is being modeled after in terms of pricing.
Right. Yeah. So that kind of leaves one question I want to pose to the group. Let's see, we kind of went through some of the slides here. Where do you think this is headed with iBuyers? What do you think their role is going to be going forward? Because, one slide that was interesting to me, and I think we have it here somewhere, but, Blackstone just raised another $25 billion in the last couple of months to purchase more properties and whatnot. So,
Naturally.
It's not like the institutional investor is gone, right? But when it comes to these buyer-seller models like Zillow had and all these, they might change and merge and shift, right? So where do we think it's headed?
Well, listen, there's always going to be a place in the market for an iBuyer right now. There's always that person that doesn't want to deal with the public, doesn't want to deal with agents, just wants a number and wants to move on, not even get top dollar or anything like that. So they're always going to be here. I think they're definitely going to try to shift away from their algorithms a little bit. They're probably going to get a little bit more agents on the ground in the cities to get a better idea and understanding. At least they should, to help themselves.
That's a good point, because Zillow is a brokerage now too, right?
Exactly. And with them partnering with Opendoor, then they could really get those agents on the streets to really help with that model, to help bring it together. They're always going to be there. It's going to be a nice little niche market for them, for all those people. But I think that's their biggest shift, is they're probably going to get more actual agents on the ground, try to push more for their actual brokerage, as opposed to just all algorithm online stuff. That way they can actually have people run numbers and get a more accurate number base, because that's what I'm seeing, at least starting, are low ball offers from them, just like a standard cash investor at this point. So I think they're starting to really make that shift.
I think it's gonna be actually super interesting. I think it can go a couple of ways, especially Zillow. Obviously, Zillow is a huge company, has a lot of money. That if they actually learned their lesson and took something from kind of their trial and error period, I would say, they could get dangerous. I think that due to their marketing budget and the reach that they have, that if they actually did this right, I think they could kill it in the market. If they did things a little bit more strategic and put a little bit more, emphasis on how they sell and, the end consumer, or they could keep doing what they're doing and just, really make their money when times are good for them. But I think it's going to be really interesting. I don't know which way it's going to go, but I mean, if you think about the way that technology is taking all industries, these are the companies that, have the technology platforms and have the ability to really capitalize in that market. So I don't know. I think that it could go one of each way there.
I think you're right with Zillow as well, with them partnering with Opendoor. I think they're already starting to take that step where we all know their bread and butter is through marketing, and they make all their money from agents like us that are paying them for leads, which I don't do, but a lot of big people do. So they make all their money from us. And so Zillow has all that bread and butter money coming in, and they cut their loss early with buying houses because they saw where it was kind of going and how much they were losing. And instead, they partnered with a company like Opendoor that already has everything in place, so they can kind of hedge their bets with them to see how well they can do to handle the market. And if that works out for them, that's fantastic. But they're also making sure that they're not going to hit that giant loss again just by partnering with them.
Right.
So it's a smart move.
I think. Do you think, especially like Maria, do you think for your clients, especially for your class of clients, that Opendoor, Zillow, or anybody can outperform what you would do for your clients?
No, definitely not. I mean, I think it was Max that brought up there is something to be said for, the personal relationship, the personal touch. I mean, once you get into, I mean, for every demographic of buyer and seller, but especially going into the luxury market, I mean, it's a whole other white glove service game that I don't think there's any robot that can quite do that.
No. Right.
But
exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You never know.
I believe the same. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
matters. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that personal touch, but at the same time, I think it made me realize that as an industry, we're really bad at communicating the process of real estate, because a lot of the things that were being pitched as benefits through these programs, through the hecticness of like, I need to get this sold, I need to buy this, blah, blah, blah. A lot of those things we do as agents, and we do them pretty well, actually. And if we were just better at explaining, like, look, this process isn't new to the iBuyer process. It happens here as well. So like having that effective communication with our marketplace, I think that's one lesson I learned through the process, is like, we need to get better at that. You know what I mean?
I think a big thing to look out for too is when you have these large companies that are coming together. I don't think their strategy was necessarily trying to make a profit up front. I think it was more about market share, because what happens if some of the biggest companies in the world team up and they gain enough of the market share, and then the market goes down, or that company goes under? I mean, they might expect to be bailed out. I mean, the same thing happened with the lending institutions in 2008. It's
Right.
If you get enough of the market share, you're just going to get bailed out. And so then you really can't lose. So then you own all these properties, and no matter what, you're going to win because you have gotten enough of the market that you have so much influence. And I think that's one of the things that real estate agents do completely different than these iBuyers or hedge funds, is because you're actually dealing with individual people instead of dealing with corporations whose interests might not be in the same interests as your own. You know, like residential neighborhoods used to be bought by people who lived in them. Now they're being bought as an asset. And so I think that's very important to know, in the sense of, okay, when I'm dealing with an actual real estate agent, I'm dealing with an individual just like me, rather than a company that doesn't have the same motivations as I do.
Right.
That's a good point.
That's a really good point.
Good point,
Yeah.
Max.
Yeah.
And that was kind of their model before. It was like quantity over quality, and that's kind of what they provided to their clients as well. They didn't really provide the quality, personal, that process that everyone wants. Like we said, it's one of the biggest purchases that anyone's going to make in their whole entire life. You don't want to be dealing with a robot, where he's sending you an automated text already. You want that personal experience. You want to feel like you're being taken care of, and that person genuinely wants the best for you, your family, or whoever you're working with. So that's one thing that they lacked. And the model works, but it's for that certain individual. So they're definitely not going away. The whole iBuyer, the Zillow, people are still going to buy homes without looking at them. But longer term, realistically, I don't think people really want that. People want that personal experience.
Right. And I think that's the big challenge going forward. I think we're going to have as professionals is Zillow has created the Google of real estate, right? And the hardest thing in this job, at least for me, has been managing the entire client experience from top to bottom, right? And we have to do that over and over and over again. And everyone's trying to do that as real estate agents and trying to do the best we can. And one thing where it starts is the curiosity of, I need to buy a house. Where do I start looking, right? And since Zillow has created this platform of, I can just go online and start looking at houses right now, instantly, right? And creating that initial resource, the challenge for us as real estate agents is to, I think, enhance that client experience from the beginning to the end and create that value and communicate it effectively for everyone. So, they see the difference between just working with a company where you're talking to a different representative every time and a local real estate agent that knows the market, knows the nuances of the process, and is able to help them with that process.
And I think that's a great probably segue into having another discussion like this, maybe next week or the week after, in terms of topic of what causes friction for buyers and sellers, and how agents like us are doing things and how we operate to remove those pieces. And so, because that's what a lot of these places offer is what feels like somewhat. The more frictionless they can make it, the better the experience seems to any buyer, seller, consumer, investor, whatever it might be, right?
Right.
So certainly, I think have a discussion around that. And I think kind of wrapping up this conversation for today, I think we're all in that agreement phase of iBuyers are not going anywhere, and everyone looks like a genius in an up market, especially a rapid rising up market for the last 2 years. I looked like a genius too. So
yeah. And now they're gonna know the truth, Akash.
So with all that said, I think it will just be interesting to see, how much market share they continue to keep in terms of the inventory levels moving forward, and you're going to see them decrease. And where they're going to do is, like Christian said at the very start, they're going to start making their money on the purchase in terms of buying more. Back to what every cash investor, fix and flip, buy and hold investor has been doing since the beginning of time there.
Right.
And I think where we can leave it too for investors especially, or people out of state who don't live in Arizona, think about what this tells us is, look at the markets that we're feeling this. It's the Phoenix market, it's Vegas, the markets that these companies swooped into and went crazy on in the past couple of years. That means that there was the investment potential, the ROI potential, where what does that tell you? That if these companies are willing to put that much money on the line and take these losses and still keep going in these markets, then there is money to be made here, and there is appreciation to be made over the next several years in these markets.
Right. And we just have to educate our clients and have them ready for that opportunity as it comes up.
Right.
So. All right, guys. Thank you guys for the live call. I appreciate every single one of you guys. I hope more people see this stream. Every agent on this stream works extremely hard for their clients. The reason we align with everyone in this group is because we have a very common focus and ambition to service clients and be successful in that. So thanks for joining us on this one. Can't wait to do the next one. Everyone on the stream, hang in there. Don't leave yet. But thank you guys for the stream. And if you catch the stream afterward and it's not live, you can still comment in the section below, and all of us will see it. All of us will respond, and we'll help you however we can. So thanks for joining us. All right. Thank you guys too.
Yeah.
Audience.